Everyone in the city knew the name Adrian Hayes. If a new skyscraper was built, people assumed his company had invested in it. If a startup became successful overnight, chances were Adrian had funded it. Business magazines regularly featured him on their covers, calling him the young billionaire who never loses. At just 35 years old, Adrian had built one of the country's largest technology companies from a small office with only 3 employees. Years of relentless determination had turned him into one of the wealthiest and most influential businessmen in the nation. To the outside world, he had everything anyone could ever dream of. Luxury, penthouses in 3 different cities, a private jet that could take him anywhere in the world. A collection of rare sports cars worth millions, and a magnificent mansion sitting on a hill overlooking the city, surrounded by perfectly landscaped gardens and protected by high iron gates. People envied his life. They imagined glamorous parties, endless celebrations, and constant happiness. The truth was completely different. The mansion was always quiet, too quiet. Every room was beautifully decorated, yet somehow felt empty. The dining table could seat 20 people, but Adrian almost always ate alone. The grand piano in the living room hadn't been touched in years. Family portraits still hung on the walls, reminding him of happier days that would never return. Ever since losing both of his parents in a tragic accident nearly 10 years earlier, Adrian had buried himself in work. Business became his escape. Success became his distraction. The more money he earned, the less time he had to think about the loneliness waiting for him at home. His employees respected him. Some even admired him, but nobody truly knew him. At work, Adrian was known as a perfectionist. He expected excellence from everyone around, Jim including himself. He rarely smiled during meetings. He disliked excuses. He valued discipline above everything else. If someone arrived late, he noticed. If a report contained even the smallest mistake, he found it immediately. Many people believed he was cold-hearted. Only a few understood that he wasn't cruel. He was simply carrying pain he had never learned to let go of. Every morning followed the exact same routine. His alarm rang at 5:30. He spent 30 minutes exercising before reviewing business reports. Over a quick breakfast. By 7 o'clock, he was already answering emails. His chauffeur drove him to headquarters, where back-to-back meetings filled every hour of the day. Lunch usually sat untouched on his desk. Because he was too busy working, by the time he returned home, it was often well past sunset. The mansion staff greeted him politely each evening. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes." He nodded without stopping. "Good evening." Then he disappeared into his study, where work continued until midnight. It had been years since anyone had convinced him to slow down. One Monday afternoon, as Adrian reviewed financial reports in his office at home, the head housekeeper knocked gently on the study door. "Come in, Mrs. Eleanor." Brooks had worked for the Hayes family for more than 20 years. She had watched Adrian grow from a cheerful little boy into the reserved man he had become. She entered carrying a small folder. "Mr. Hayes, I'd like to inform you that Mrs. Watson officially retired this morning." Adrian looked up briefly. "I hope she enjoys her retirement." "I'm sure she will." Mrs. Brooks smiled. "She asked me to thank you for the generous retirement gift." He simply nodded. "I've already hired someone to take her place." Adrian returned his attention to the documents in front of him. "As long as the work gets done, I have no objections." Mrs. Brooks hesitated. "Her name is Lily Carter. She's 24 years old. Excellent references, hardworking, very respectful." Adrian closed the folder in front of him. "I'm sure you made the right decision." He wasn't interested in hearing more. To him, employees came and went. He never allowed himself to become attached. The following morning, a small taxi stopped outside the mansion gates. Lily Carter stepped out carrying an old suitcase that had clearly seen better days. She paused for a moment and stared at the enormous estate. The mansion looked more like a palace than a home. Tall, white columns framed the entrance. Large windows reflected the morning sunlight. Beautiful gardens surrounded the property in every direction. For someone who had grown up in a tiny apartment with her mother and 2 younger brothers, the place felt almost unreal. She took a deep breath. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. Mrs. Brooks welcomed her with a warm smile. "You must be Lily." "Yes, ma'am. Welcome." As they walked through the mansion, Lily couldn't help admiring everything around her. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above. Paintings covered the walls. Every piece of furniture looked expensive, yet despite all the luxury, something felt missing. The house didn't feel warm. It felt lonely. Mrs. Brooks seemed to notice her expression. It wasn't always this quiet. Lily looked at her. "Mr. Hayes used to laugh a lot when his parents were alive." "What happened?" "Life happened." Lily nodded gently. She didn't ask any more questions. Throughout the morning, she met the rest of the household staff. Everyone spoke highly of Adrian. "He's fair, he pays well, but don't expect conversation. He keeps to himself." Lily listened carefully. She had worked in enough homes to know that wealthy people often treated employees as though they were invisible. She promised herself she would simply do her job with honesty and kindness. Nothing more. That evening, Adrian returned from another exhausting day at work. As always, the staff quietly greeted him. He acknowledged them with a brief nod before walking toward the staircase. Without realizing it, he passed Lily in the hallway. She smiled politely. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes." Adrian paused for only a second. He gave a short nod. "Good evening." Then he continued upstairs. Lily watched him disappear. "He looks tired," she murmured. Mrs. Brooks sighed softly. He just doesn't know how to stop." Over the next few days, Lily settled into her new routine. She worked carefully, making sure every room was spotless. She learned everyone's names. She treated every member of the staff with respect, whether they were gardeners, drivers, or chefs. Unlike some employees who whispered about Adrian's fortune, Lily never asked about his expensive cars or his business empire. She wasn't impressed by wealth. She had seen enough hardship in life to know that money couldn't solve every problem. Late one rainy evening, Adrian returned home after one of the most difficult meetings of the year. His tie was loose. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. He looked completely exhausted. As he walked toward the kitchen, expecting to grab a glass of water before locking himself inside his study again, he noticed someone standing near the stove. Lily was quietly stirring a pot of homemade soup. The rich aroma filled the room. She looked up as he entered. Their eyes met for the first time. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple moment would quietly begin changing both of their lives forever. The rich aroma of homemade soup filled the kitchen as Adrian stood silently near the doorway. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lily smiled politely and turned off the stove. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes." He gave a small nod. "Good evening." She picked up a bowl and carefully poured the soup into it. "You haven't had dinner yet, have you?" Adrian looked surprised. "How do you know?" She placed the bowl on the kitchen counter. "You skipped breakfast this morning?" His eyebrows rose slightly. "I noticed your breakfast tray was almost untouched." She reached for a basket of warm bread, "and your lunch came back exactly the way it left." Adrian stared at her. No one had paid attention to his eating habits in years. Most people around him were too busy discussing business deals, stock prices, or investment opportunities. Lily had noticed something much simpler, that he hadn't eaten. "I'm not hungry," Adrian replied. Lily looked at him for a second before gently pushing the bowl toward him. "Maybe not, but your body still needs food." Her voice wasn't demanding. It sounded more like quiet concern. Without waiting for his response, she returned to wiping down the kitchen counters. Adrian looked at the bowl. The steam rose gently into the air. For reasons he couldn't explain, the smell reminded him of his childhood. His mother used to make vegetable soup whenever he came home tired from school. She would always smile and say, "You think you don't need dinner until you taste the first spoonful." Almost without thinking, Adrian picked up the spoon, took one bite. His eyes widened slightly. Wasn't exactly the same recipe, but somehow, it carried the same warmth. He finished the entire bowl. Lily glanced toward him with a small smile, but said nothing. As Adrian left the kitchen that night, he realized something unusual. For the first time in months, he hadn't gone straight to his study. Instead, he had spent nearly 20 minutes simply sitting at the kitchen table. It felt strangely peaceful. The following morning, Adrian walked downstairs earlier than usual. The dining table had already been prepared. Fresh flowers stood in the center. His coffee was exactly the way he liked it. Everything looked perfect. Mrs. Brooks noticed him looking around. Lily arranged the flowers. Adrian glanced at the vase. "They're different," she said. "Fresh flowers make a house feel alive." He didn't respond. But as he left for work, he found himself looking back at the dining room one last time. Over the following weeks, small changes began appearing throughout the mansion. The library books were organized by subject instead of color. The old fireplace, which had remained unused for years, was cleaned until it looked brand new. Family photographs that had gathered dust were carefully polished and returned to their proper places. Even the garden seemed brighter. It wasn't that Lily had changed the mansion. She had simply brought attention back to the little things everyone else had forgotten. One afternoon, Adrian arrived home much earlier than expected after an important meeting had been canceled. As he entered the house, soft piano music floated through the hallway. He stopped walking. The melody was gentle, familiar. He followed the sound until he reached the grand living room. There, sitting in front of the old piano, was Lily. Her fingers moved gracefully across the keys. Her eyes remained closed as she played. For a moment, Adrian simply listened. It had been years since music had echoed through the mansion. Then, the floor creaked beneath his shoe. Lily immediately stopped playing. She stood so quickly that the piano bench slid backward. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes. I finished my work early. I shouldn't have touched it." She looked genuinely worried. "I'll never do it again." Adrian slowly walked toward the piano. His eyes rested on the polished wood. My mother used to play that song. Lily looked surprised. My grandmother taught it to me. She gently placed her hand on the piano. She used to say, music makes a lonely house feel loved. Adrian remained silent. After a long pause, he quietly asked, would you play the rest? Lily blinked. You want me to? He nodded once. She slowly sat back down as her fingers touched the keys again. The room filled with beautiful music. Adrian closed his eyes. Memories he had tried to bury for years slowly returned. His mother laughing while playing the piano. His father pretending to sing along even though he couldn't carry a tune. Holiday dinners. Birthday celebrations. Family evenings that once filled this very room. For the first time since losing his parents, those memories didn't only hurt, they also made him smile. When the song ended, Adrian quietly applauded. Lily looked embarrassed. I'm not that good. My grandmother always said, music isn't about being perfect. It's about making people feel something. Adrian looked at her. She was right. That simple conversation became the beginning of many others. Sometimes they met in the kitchen. Sometimes in the library. Occasionally, in the garden, while Lily watered the flowers. Their conversations were never long. But they became something Adrian secretly looked forward to. One evening, Adrian noticed Lily sitting on a bench during her break, reading a book. He walked over. What are you reading? She held up the cover. Starting a small business. He smiled faintly. I wasn't expecting that. She laughed softly. Most people don't. You enjoy business. I enjoy baking. She nodded. My dream is to own a little bakery someday. She smiled as she spoke, her eyes bright with excitement, a place where families can sit together, fresh bread every morning, cakes made from my grandmother's recipes, nothing fancy, just somewhere people feel happy. Adrian listened carefully. Are you planning to do it? I'm saving every paycheck. It might take years, but I'll get there. There wasn't a hint of greed in her voice. She wasn't looking for shortcuts. She wasn't hoping someone wealthy would solve her problems. She simply believed in working hard. Adrian admired that more than he expected. As the weeks passed, he began noticing something else. No matter how difficult his day had been, coming home no longer felt like returning to an empty building. It felt like returning to a home. Not because of the expensive furniture, not because of the beautiful gardens. Because someone inside genuinely cared whether he had eaten, whether he had rested, and whether he was smiling. Those simple acts of kindness slowly reached places in his heart that years of success never could. One afternoon, Adrian's longtime business partner, Victor, noticed a change almost immediately. You've been leaving the office. Earlier, Adrian looked up from his laptop. Sometimes Victor smiled knowingly. I heard your new housekeeper has everyone talking. Adrian frowned. What do you mean? They say she's the reason you've started smiling. Again, Adrian didn't answer. Victor leaned back in his chair. Be careful, people notice everything. You're one of the richest men in the country. She's your employee. If this becomes anything more, he'll let the sentence hang in the air. People will talk. Adrian stared out the office window at the city below. For years, he had lived according to other people's expectations. Their opinions had influenced nearly every decision he made. But this time, something felt different. Without taking his eyes off the skyline, he quietly replied, for the first time in my life, I don't care what people think. At that moment, Adrian still hadn't admitted the truth to himself. But deep inside, he already knew. He wasn't looking forward to coming home because of the mansion. Anymore, he was looking forward to seeing Lily. The following week, Adrian found himself checking the time far more often than usual. For years, he had been the last person to leave the office. Now, without even realizing it, he was finishing meetings earlier and postponing anything that could wait until the next day. His assistant noticed the change. You have another meeting scheduled for 6 o'clock, Mr. Hayes. Adrian glanced at the clock. No, she looked confused. No, reschedule it for tomorrow morning. His assistant blinked in surprise. Is everything all right? Adrian smiled faintly. Everything's getting better. By the time he reached the mansion that evening, the sun was beginning to set. The warm orange light covered the gardens, making the estate look more peaceful than ever. As he walked inside, he heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Not loud laughter, just soft, genuine happiness. He quietly stepped closer. Lily was helping one of the younger kitchen assistants decorate a birthday cake. The young assistant accidentally smeared frosting across the side. Oh no, she looked horrified. I ruined it. Lily laughed gently. No, you didn't? She picked up a small piping bag and added a few simple decorations around the frosting. There, it looks intentional now. The assistant's face lit up. You're amazing. Lily smiled. My grandmother used to tell me that mistakes are just opportunities to become creative. Adrian stood silently for a moment. He realized something. Lily had a way of making everyone around her feel calmer, safer, more confident. She never raised her voice. She never embarrassed anyone for making mistakes. She simply helped. When she finally noticed Adrian standing nearby, she smiled. "You're home early." "I am. I was just making tea. Would you like some?" He nodded. "I'd like that." They sat at the small kitchen table, instead of the enormous dining room. The kitchen felt warmer, more personal, as Lily poured tea into 2 cups. Adrian looked around. "You seem to know everyone here." She laughed. "They're wonderful people. They work very hard. They deserve someone who listens to them." Adrian looked down at his cup. "I haven't done that very well. You've been busy." That's an excuse. She didn't argue. She simply smiled. "Then maybe tomorrow you can ask someone how their day was." He chuckled. "It sounds surprisingly difficult." "It's easier than you think." The next morning, Adrian walked into the office. His employees immediately noticed something unusual. As he passed the reception desk, he stopped. "Good morning, Sarah." The receptionist nearly dropped her notebook. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes." He smiled politely before continuing toward his office. The entire reception area fell silent. One employee whispered, "Did he just smile?" Another whispered back, "I think he even remembered her name." Word spread through the building before lunchtime. People couldn't understand what had changed. Only Adrian knew. For the first time in years, someone had reminded him that success meant more than profits and contracts. A few days later, Adrian returned home carrying a small box. He found Lily arranging fresh flowers in the living room. "I brought you something." She looked surprised. "For me." He handed her the box. Inside was a beautifully bound cookbook filled with traditional bakery recipes from around the world. Lily's eyes widened. It's beautiful. You mentioned your dream. I thought you might like it. She carefully turned the pages as though holding something priceless. "I've wanted this book for years." She looked up at him. "Thank you." Her smile was brighter than any expensive gift Adrian had ever received in return. That single smile stayed in his mind for the rest of the evening. Days turned into weeks. Without realizing it, Adrian had begun changing in ways that surprised everyone around him. No longer skipped meals. He started taking short walks through the gardens after work. Sometimes, he even sat in the living room while Lily practiced the piano instead of hiding inside his study. The mansion no longer felt silent. It felt alive. One afternoon, Adrian's business partner, Victor, visited the estate to discuss an upcoming merger. As they finished their meeting, Victor noticed Adrian watching Lily through the garden window as she trimmed roses. Victor smiled knowingly. "So it's true." Adrian looked away. "What is, you're in love?" Adrian immediately shook his head. "No." Victor folded his arms. "You've spent 20 years making decisions with your head. For once, you should listen to your heart." Adrian remained silent. After Victor left, those words stayed with him. That evening, as Adrian walked through the garden, he accidentally overheard 2 members of the household staff speaking near the greenhouse. "I heard Lily accepted another job." "What?" "She's leaving next week. They're offering her higher pay." "I'll miss her. So will everyone else." Adrian stopped walking. His heart seemed to skip a beat. Leaving, no one had told him. For the rest of the evening, he couldn't concentrate. He opened reports but never read them. He answered emails without remembering what he had written. Only one thought filled his mind. She's leaving. The next morning, he found Mrs. Brooks organizing supplies. "Is Lily really leaving?" Mrs. Brooks nodded sadly. "Yes, she received another offer." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Mrs. Brooks smiled gently. "I don't think she wanted to make a fuss." Adrian immediately walked toward the staff quarters. His footsteps felt unusually heavy when he reached Lily's room. The door was slightly open. Inside, she was carefully packing books into a cardboard box. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning." Adrian stood quietly for a moment. "Is it true?" Her smile softened. "Yes, I'm leaving." He stepped inside. "Why?" Lily carefully folded one of her aprons before answering. "I've been thinking about my future. I've saved enough money to take the next step toward opening my bakery. I'm closer to my dream now. You could stay here. I could, but I shouldn't." He frowned. "Why not?" She looked at him with gentle honesty. "Because people are already talking. I've noticed the looks, the whispers. They think I'm here because you're wealthy." She smiled sadly. "I don't want anyone believing my dreams were handed to me. I want to earn them." Adrian took a slow breath. "Lily," he looked around the room. "When you first came here, this mansion was beautiful, but it wasn't a home." She listened quietly. "You didn't just clean the rooms. You filled them with life. You made people laugh. You made the staff feel appreciated. You made me remember who I used to be." His voice became softer. "I spent years believing money could solve every problem, but none of it could fix the loneliness I carried." He looked directly into her eyes. "You did." Tears slowly formed in Lily's eyes. "I never tried to change you. I know, you simply cared. You reminded me to eat. You reminded me to rest. You reminded me that life is more than work." He smiled. "And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you." The room became completely silent. Lily lowered her eyes as tears rolled gently down her cheeks. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, "I was afraid this would happen." Adrian looked confused. "You were—" She nodded. "I realized my feelings weeks ago, but I kept telling myself they could never matter. You deserve someone from your world." He shook his head immediately. "No, I deserve someone who sees me, not my company, not my money, me." Lily looked at him. "I've never cared about your fortune. I know. I care about the man who always thanks the gardeners. Now, the man who smiles at the staff, the man who finally laughs again." Adrian smiled through misty eyes. "That's because of you." She stepped closer. "I still want to build my bakery. And I want you to. I'll never ask you to give up your dream. I wouldn't let you." He laughed softly. "I expected that answer." She smiled. "If we're going to have a future, it has to be one where we both keep becoming the people we dreamed of being." Adrian gently reached for her hand. "I don't want to rescue you. I want to stand beside you." Lily squeezed his hand. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." 8 months later, the grand opening of Lily's Corner Bakery attracted a long line of customers stretching down the street. Fresh bread filled the air with its warm aroma. Children laughed as they chose cupcakes from the display. Families gathered around small wooden tables, exactly as Lily had imagined years before. Near the entrance stood Adrian, not giving orders, not making speeches, simply smiling with pride as he watched Lily welcome her first customers. A reporter recognized him and asked, "Mr. Hayes, why would one of the country's richest men spend his morning in a small neighborhood bakery?" Adrian looked toward Lily, who was happily serving an elderly couple. Then he smiled. "Because everything I spent years searching for, I found here." The billionaire who had once believed success was measured by money finally understood the greatest investment he would ever make. It wasn't in another company. It wasn't in another company. It was in a kind-hearted woman who taught him that love doesn't grow because of wealth. It grows because two people believe in each other's dreams, lift each other during difficult times, and choose one another every single day. Sometimes the richest person in the world isn't the one with the biggest fortune, it's the one who has someone to come home to.